In this video, I'm going to take a look at every edition of D&D up to first. So I got the idea for this video from COP1721. I hope I'm saying that name right. But he asked, did you do a video on BX versus AD&D? And I haven't done. There's a lot of different editions. So I'm just going to go through some of the ones that I have and just give my thoughts on them, because if someone's looking to play, you know, an edition of D&D, the OSR, and there's a lot of different flavors, and they actually play a bit differently. Each one plays a little bit differently. And so I'm just going to start off with the one that I have. The very first one that I have is this here. The Dungeons & Dragons. It's the 3-volume set. And this is the oldest. This is the oldest version. There is an older version of this, of D&D, but I don't have it. And you know, this is Gygax and Arneson, and this is this is really the beginning of it. So the original game, you had to use chainmail with it, and it was a mass combat game, which this is. And in this one, I believe, Men and Magic, here we are, the classes. So these are small books, and the rules are a little bit like they're not difficult, but they're not written really well. And so a person, I think, would have a little bit difficulty playing it, sort of if they're used to the modern sort of version of the game. But it's completely playable, and it's based on mass combat, sort of, because D&D itself came from mass combat. People were sitting around playing these mass combat games, and it's just sort of evolved into a role-playing game where people would take on the personas of their characters. And how exactly they did that, how exactly they played, is subject to a whole bunch of debate. Now, the original one didn't have a thief. You know, you only had the fighting man, magic user, clerics. Now, fighting man. There was a little bit of controversy in this because some people didn't understand what this means. They somehow, it offends people that there's a men on there. But in Middle English, men just meant person. It meant people. And so there's really no point in getting offended by that. A fighting man could easily be a woman. There's no distinction. You could call it fighting people, and it would be the same thing. Magic user, you could also say magic user men. Be the same thing. It would be magic user person. And if you go and you read some Old English, you'll see what I'm talking about. For example, a wifeman. A wifeman was a wife, but it meant wife person. Didn't mean a man. This doesn't mean man. This means people. And it was the way that they used to say that. So anyway, I just thought I'd mention that because it kind of drives me crazy. I love Old English. I like reading Old English, and I see this all the time. People getting confused about the word men or the word man, or the word like mankind. It just means, people. Humans. So anyway, so it's got fighting men in it. I don't know if that's last or not. I believe most of these versions you can still get them on Drive-Thru-RPG, but I think that that Wizards of the Coast is going in and they're changing things in the game. So, I don't know if it still says Fighting Man or not. That might be one of the things that they've changed. I know they're changing stuff. What exactly, I don't really know or care. So, that's this game. And It's very simple, but the way it's laid out is a little bit complex. It's not an easy game to navigate and move around. It is once you get used to it. And there's lots of additional stuff for it that you can get. The old stuff, the old editions of the, supplements and stuff. Like there's this here. There is, sorry for the glare, this one here, this is the Greyhawk. This is the Blackmore miniature rules, right, by Gary Gygax. Swords and Spells, Gods and Demigods. This is sort of like the Deities and Demigods, that came out later on with first edition. So this is typically called the 0 edition D&D, or OE, or OE, you'll hear it referred to. And I believe you can still get it on Drive-Thru-RPG. I'm not going in any kind of chronological order here, just going through sort of the way I encountered this stuff. The next one is this one, the basic D&D. I believe the no, that's not true. Anyway, is this edition? It's a box edition. There was another box edition that came out. This is the Blue Holmes. It came with a box. I don't have the box. I only have this book here. So in terms of if you want the game to be very simple, this is probably the simplest version. I believe there's only the one book. I might be wrong on that. If I make a mistake, if I can be corrected, please leave a comment down below. I do not mind at all. I know I don't get everything right, so it's, please feel free. Or if you can add some context to what I'm saying here, or add to it, please do. I really enjoy people's comments. So this version of the game, again, what do I have? From 1974. I don't know when. This is the second edition that I have here. And this version is quite easy. Now, it does include the thief. One thing that these games have, this one was human-centric. I don't believe there's any races in it. It's just men, people. This one does have races in it, and it has race as class. So you don't play elf fighter, for example. You just play an elf, and the elf has different abilities, right? So here we have more complicated alignment system. So in this version here, the alignment system is very simple. There's good, neutral, and evil. Here it gets a little more complex. And but it's all contained in one book. I really like that, but it's a lot simpler. This one came in 2 books, and I'll show you that in a minute. It included this book. It was sold separately in another box. So we had this one. It came in the first box, and it came with the famous Keep on the Borderlands, right? So I've never actually played with this book. It's pretty nice shape, actually. Fortunately, I bought it. I bought this unopened, and I didn't realize it was unopened, so I opened it. I thought somebody else had wrapped it up in plastic. Oh, waste. Oh, well, over the years, it's got a hole in it. I beat the hell out of it. I don't. My games are to be enjoyed and played. So, yeah. So these two, this isn't one. This is the rules in this is contained in one book. This is the Blue Holmes, it's called. Because the reason it's called Blue Holmes is because it was edited by Gary Holmes. This is the Moldvay version, and you'll hear that people talked about the Moldvay because it was edited by Tom Moldvay. So these are 2 different versions of the game. This one, in my opinion, is a lot simpler, simply because it's in the one book. It's very easy to navigate and find everything. I think this is one of the best versions of the early game, I believe. Just for that purpose, because I really like simple. I really like it when it's simplified. This game's a little more complex, and it's actually quite cumbersome to try and get through it. Here's a little illustration explaining the different, what the different alignments mean. I found this illustration really helpful when I first started playing the game. I wasn't very old, and the concept was kind of difficult, but I understood it, pretty well just from this drawing. But anyway, lots of spells and stuff. There was supposed to be a 3rd book made for this. Some people have made one. It's one of these. I'm not sure. You can get it on Drive-Thru-RPG, I believe. I think it's this one. I don't know. One of these books is supposed to be sort of, the fan version of the 3rd book that was intended for this, that never actually was published. And by far, this is my favorite version of the game, probably because it's the one that I really enjoyed playing, and I've played the hell out of it. So, but it is, again, races class. So if you're going to play a magic user, you're just a magic user. Or sorry, if you play a elf magic user, for example, then you're kind of a split between the fighter and magic user. If you play a halfling or a hobbit, as it was called in the original game, then you're kind of a thief, and like that. And then you've got, of course, people. You can play a man, meaning human. And yeah, I found this game pretty simple to use. It's a little hard to navigate. It takes some getting used to. There's some errors in it and stuff. This is my beat up copy that I can that I read, and then it takes it up. It takes it up to further levels. Certainly, I think these two books are more than enough to play a great campaign that'll go on for a very long time. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful version of the game. I've done videos on this before. And that's mainly the difference. It's just this is a little more complicated than the Blue Holmes, and it's a little bit. This one's a little bit more difficult to navigate than this one is. This one's probably the. It's sort of less complicated, but more complicated, and it's harder to navigate and so forth, and find stuff in. Basically, because you're in 3 different books, so you have to access 3 different books. Whereas this one, you've only got 1 book. This, you've got 2 books, and the rules are, D&D sort of just finding its legs in this version, so it's not really as refined as it's starting to get through these different versions. And then we get to these ones, and I'll just show each box just quickly. There's the basic set, there's the expert set, and this is called the BECMI version of the game. So now we've got the OE version, we've got the Holmes, and we've got the Moldvay, and here we have the BECMI version of the game. And that's basically because you've got the basic, then you've got the expert, you've got the companion, you've got the masters version of it, and then you've got the immortals version of it. And this game is really complex, actually. It starts out very simple. And I played the hell out of this game too, which is kind of a funny story, because when we played this, I used these 2 books together, not realizing that the rules were different. So I don't know what that says about me, but whatever. I know better now. So this was a lot easier to sort of learn how the game was because you start out, it starts here, it's very well explained. You have examples of adventures. You even have a solo adventure that you can play through in it. It gives you ideas of how things should be, filling out a character sheet, all the different classes and so forth. Again, this is race as class. So you're playing, if you play an elf, you're an elf. If you play a halfling, you're a halfling. But if you play a human, then you can be, a cleric, a thief, or a magic user. And the addition of the thief is kind of interesting, because in the old school, the OE version, this version, there is no thief in it. And the reason that there's no thief is that there really, in the original version of the game, there wasn't a place for a thief. And so somehow, for some reason, we've kind of compartmentalized the skills into this idea of a rogue. So all of a sudden, fighters, for some reason, have fewer skills than a thief would, or a rogue. Magic user, likewise. Cleric, likewise. So sort of your jack of all trades, your go-to guy would be the thief, who has a lot of skills. And in this original game, it was meant that everybody could do that. The fighter could try and open the lock. The magic user could try and open the lock. The cleric could try and open the lock. And somewhere along the line, we lost that. And we had the thief class added. I kind of wish that wasn't the case. I kind of like just the 3 classes without the thief. Just, the thief is great, but the idea that other players can do stuff too, except what they're specifically called on to do, like the fighter, the magic user, the cleric. If they want to climb a wall, they can climb a wall. If they want to open a lock, they can. And I know lots of people will have rules where, yeah, they allow that to happen. But originally, it was a lot more ingrained, if you know what I mean, into the game. And there wasn't this idea of a separate thief. And I like the thief class, don't get me wrong. I think thieves are great, but I kind of like the old way of doing it better, you know. So anyway, great artwork in this. The game was starting to get really very polished. And it's interesting because in the first edition, in these two versions of the game, at least for my game group back in the 80s, you know, early 80s, late 70s, this was considered kind of the babyish version of D&D, the kids version. And then later on, the you know, with the advanced Dungeons and Dragons, this was the big boy game. This is what the big boys played. And it's unfortunate, because we ended up abandoning the other, you know, so-called basic games. And I think the name didn't help it much, calling it basic D&D, whereas this is advanced D&D. I get why it was distinguished in that way, but it kind of, I think it influenced people's choices a little too much in what they were going to play, at least with the group, you know, with the people I played with. And I'll get into why in a minute. So, this one, most of these have 2 books, right? The Dungeon Master's book, the Player's book, Races, Class. 2 books, again, makes it a little bit more complicated to get through. But, you know, it has, you know, a sample adventure and some monsters in it. All of these, you know, have to come with some monsters and so forth. And it came with a nice box. And the idea was this, is that you could go all the way up to becoming an immortal. And it was kind of, oh, this is Companion, not Immortals. And the Immortals is kind of an interesting game, because as you progress up, the Immortals almost, it doesn't feel like D&D anymore. Sorry for the glare. It almost doesn't feel like D&D anymore. It turns almost into a completely different game. An interesting game. It's totally playable. And so one of the things when I played, you know, the advanced Dungeons and Dragons, we always strove to become immortal, and I've had people joke with me online about that, how that was kind of insane, and to, you know, we would actually do battle with the gods. So we'd go grab deities and demigods, and we kind of viewed that as a NPC portfolio that we could go through. And we played a lot, so it wasn't a Monty Hall game. It wasn't like a really we ground our way up to being immensely powerful characters until finally, you know, we could take on gods and stuff. Is how we played. And I think that may have been, although I don't remember, it may have been inspired by this, because I had all of these before I got into the first edition D&D. And so that may have just been what caused me to think that way. I'm not sure. But anyway, so this set is kind of, the way it works is much like this game was intended to sort of progress you up and get more complicated. With the 3rd book, it would have been a lot more complicated. And this was sort of the entire game contained in one book. The more I think about it, the more I like that. But this had a 3rd book, or was intended to have a 3rd book, and it would have just progressed you right up. I don't know if it would have progressed you up to immortality. That's pretty ambitious for a 3rd book. But this one does, and it does the same thing. It takes you in small steps as you get up in level. I love that illustration. I think that's great. As you progress up, you learn more and more rules. You get more and more options, and that kind of thing. Yeah, so that's this version of the game. And one thing that's kind of fun if you go online, you can get this too, which is those books all put into one big book. And when you see it all together, you kind of get an idea of just how complicated this game is. To call it basic doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. It's not really basic. In a lot of ways, it's very complicated. Now, the box sets took you through it slowly. You were supposed to progress up through it slowly, whereas this sort of just dumps it all on you. I guess the assumption is that you already know about it. But if you look at it, it's not simple. And, you know, it's interesting, right? I always thought of it as simple, but you know, when you look at it like this, you realize it's kind of as complicated, especially when you start getting into the different option stuff. It's kind of as complicated as first edition D&D is, right? It's sort of every bit as complicated, even though it's race as class. So dividing the races up into, you know, allowing thieves to play, or allowing elves to play different races and stuff, sort of ups the complexity a little bit for players. And I think maybe that was a tremendous big draw for the first edition D&D. So obviously, or I'm pretty sure, I shouldn't say obviously because I don't know that for sure. In fact, it might not be the case at all that someone could easily not be familiar with this game. So this game is sort of born out of I'm losing my games here. Sort of born out of this one. As this one put out different products for it and different supplements, and you had all these different sort of things built up into it. The rules, this was the original Dungeon Master's Guide, and the thing is really big. Small writing. It is not well organized in the least. It's hard as hell to find anything in it. I know for sure this one's available on Drive-Thru-RPG. How much Wizards of the Coast has messed with it, I couldn't tell you. If somebody knows, please leave a comment. I'd love to know what they've changed, because apparently they have. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they haven't changed anything. I've always loved that illustration. But you can see this gets very complicated. But what it is it's a bunch of rules that had been developed. As they were being developed, they were sort of included in this. And they were being developed as people were playing and so forth. And different supplements were getting created, and so it was sort of all edited together and put into one great big Dungeon Master's Guide. And so there are rules that contradict each other. It's hard to find things. Huge section on magic items and stuff. That obviously played a huge role in the game. There are no monsters. This had a separate monster manual. So it had a separate monster manual, so you have to pick up this monster manual separately from the game. So it's basically 3 books. Oh man, this does ever bring back memories. I love this game. So I played the hell out of this game too, and it was it's just a lot of fun. It's very complicated though, and hard to navigate, hard to find things. But once you figure it out, it's kind of really fun to try and find the way. We sort of challenged each other to try and find rules in it because it was that complicated. Here's the player's handbook. It was kind of just that complicated. This is not my original book. I lost all my original books, unfortunately. But or most of them. I've got a couple of them. So I had to replace them years ago. But anyway, so lots of spells, and there were different editions, different books published for this. Deities and Demigods, for example, Unearthed Arcana, Phenum Folio, which was sort of monsters that had been created in Europe, particularly England, I believe. And can you imagine? I paid $12 for this. But anyway, you know, and so it just added more monsters to it. So it wasn't like it is today. There isn't just, you know, just an ocean of information, ocean of options, ocean of classes, everything else now for, you know, the 5th edition. But the 1st edition, it was, you know, you got something like this, and wow, it was amazing. Yeah, so anyway, that's it. That's all the different versions. I mean, depends what you want. It depends how you want your game to be, how you want to play it, you know. If you're up for really complicated and rules hunting, then, you know, advanced D&D. If you just want something really simple, you know, you might go with the Holmes edition. It's really nice and simple. If you want something fairly complex, then this one. I think you can get a print edition of this book, which is just the BECMI master, yeah, edition. This is it, just all put together, so you don't have to buy all the books and all the boxes and everything. You can just get this, and it's quite a lot more complicated. The way it was originally published will walk you through, you know, the learning process a lot easier than, say, this book will. But this book's very well organized, hell of a lot better organized than this. And, you know, if you don't mind a fair bit of complexity, and you know, you're only going to go up to maybe, say, you know, 20th level or something, this will work just great. And you can get the extra stuff for it. There's lots of, you know, and something I haven't mentioned is the OSR. If you go out and you explore, you know, stuff that other people have published, they've expanded the hell out of all of these games. So I'll have to get into that at some point. But there's lots of variations of these rules published by other people other than TSR or Wizards of the Coast. And great versions of these games as well. And usually with their if they say, oh, it's based on this or it's based on that, usually it's a real enhancement. Usually it's better organized. Usually it's easier to understand, you know. But if you really want to go back to the core of it, then you can do that as well. Anyway, that's it. That's my video. Please leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe if you like my videos. And I'll talk to you in the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye.